Am I wrong for telling my sister-in-law no one cares that she's pregnant? See, this is one of those posts where it's like, duh, you're the asshole, but then when I read it, it's like, oh, never mind, watch. Backstory. My cousin, 33 female, who I'll call Mary, lost her husband, 32 male, and 2 of her 3 children, 3 female and 9-month-old male, in a car accident last week. Her and her daughter, 5, are as you would expect, and it's just heartbreaking. Well, today was the funeral, and my brother's wife announced her pregnancy the second they arrived at our house this morning, and we were like, okay, congratulations, but please keep it on the down low for today. Well, when we arrived at the church, she kept making gagging sounds and rubbing her stomach, saying, I, as a mom, can't imagine what she's going through. They have no kids, so people would look at her, and she'd tell them she was pregnant. Afterwards, at my aunt's house, my sister-in-law kept making everything about her. Like someone was in the bathroom and my sister-in-law would loudly say, pregnant lady needs to pee. She literally told my cousin to give her her seat so the lady with the baby could rest her feet. I ignored her until she came to Mary, stuck out her flat belly and said, me and Isaac just found out I was pregnant and honestly, we are beside ourselves. It could happen to us. Mary broke down crying. I snapped. Who says that to a woman who just literally lost 2 babies? I said loudly to my sister-in-law, no one gives an F you're pregnant. Look around. It's not just 1 but 2 babies' funerals, not to mention the love of Mary's life. Like, I knew you were an attention seeker, but for fuck's sake, you took the test 4 days ago. Just leave. Good for you. She did leave in tears, and my brother called me a fat, bitter bitch. Oh, what the fuck? I've gotten phone calls from my brother and my sister-in-law's family calling me the world of names because I made a pregnant woman cry. Mary and my aunt thank me, but if I'm being honest, I feel bad about causing a scene. So please put me in my place if I'm wrong. Her husband, your brother should have pulled her aside and be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Shut the fuck up. But if he don't do it, you can do it. So, little update. I found out this morning that my brother and my sister-in-law harassed my cousin with phone calls for her to talk to me about yesterday. My aunt gave both of them an earful and then made my cousin turn off her phone. My brother and my sister-in-law were at my parents' house trying to get their side in when I arrived. They both came at me screaming and yelling about my sister-in-law's feelings and she couldn't miscarry from the stress I caused her. Sister-in-law said if I didn't lose my attitude and apologize, I'd never be in their child's life. Oh, brother, step up, brother. I told her I didn't care, and if she was going to use the kid as a weapon, I didn't want to be in their life anyway. Things got heated, and my father ended up kicking out my brother and my sister-in-law. So yeah, all this drama at a time, we should be there for one another. I'm so sorry you have to go through that, but your sister-in-law's fucking psycho. Your brother's whipped too.
Storytime about how I found out my husband gave me HIV while I was pregnant. So, me and my husband were high school sweethearts. He was very kind, very in tune about my feelings, and we were like best friends. We never really did anything sexual because he didn't want our relationship to be like that. We were together for 6 years, waited until marriage to lose our virginity to one another. The year before getting married, I noticed he would stare at guys a lot, but I would never really think anything about it because at least he was not looking at girls. Fast forward, we get married, and 2 years later, I get pregnant, and we were both excited. When I get to the doctors, I get my yearly test done for STDs, of course, but as always, I'm clean. Maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, I get a call from the doctor saying I tested positive for HIV. Let me know if you guys want a part 2. Part 2 of how I found out my husband gave me HIV while I was pregnant. Like I said earlier, 2 weeks later, I get a call from the doctor saying I tested positive for HIV. I was shaking and crying, and I was so in shock. And the only thing I ever heard about HIV at the time was that I only had a couple months to live. I couldn't believe the only man that I've ever been with gave me this disease. I thought I was doing everything right, the right way, and still ended up being in a hole. I was so nervous to confront my husband because I didn't think it was like him to cheat on me, and I thought maybe he thought I was cheating. So the next day, I pretended everything was fine. I lied to him and told him that my phone died and that I needed his to call my mother. He gave me his phone. I went into the bathroom and immediately I start snooping. As I'm going through his phone, I didn't see any text from girls. So I'm like, maybe the doctor got the wrong test. I'm running out of time. Come back for part 3. Part 3 of how I found out my husband gave me HIV while I was pregnant. So, like I said, I went through his phone and I didn't see any text from other girls. So I'm thinking maybe the doctor called the wrong person. Anyways, I gave up on looking through his phone and I just talked to him. I sat him down and told him that I had HIV and that I haven't cheated on him ever. He looked at me and cried. He broke down in tears and apologized. I got so upset with him because I realized that he did cheat on me and I was really upset for our unborn child. So I took all of his clothes, I took his things, and I threw them all out. Right before I kicked him out, I yelled at him saying, "Who was the girl that gave it to you?" And he told me it wasn't a girl. It was his friend David. This story time is how my house caught on fire the night before Christmas. By the way, I was 9 at the time. So, like always, everyone wrapped their gifts and put it underneath the Christmas tree. And I can remember that year, my parents really went all out for Christmas. They decorated all around the house and inside. My mom went as far as putting lights all over the railings. There were many gifts under the tree, and I seen that most were for me, and I was really excited. By the way, I'm the only child, but my cousins were going to come over also. So there were gifts for them too. After everything was decorated, my mom cooked the night before and everyone went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I get shaken by my dad telling me that we need to get out of the house. I was so confused until I walked outside of my room and the whole second floor was smoking. When we ran downstairs, my living room and kitchen was on fire and it was so traumatizing to see. And I'll explain why my house caught on fire in part 2. So come back for part 2. This is part 2 of how my house caught on fire the night before Christmas. So like I said before, I was woken up in the middle of the night by my dad telling me that we needed to get out of the house. And the first floor was in flames, but we managed to make it out. When we left, we immediately went to my grandma's house. I asked my parents, why did our house catch on fire? And my grandma sent me away to go play in her indoor porch. I was upset because all the presents were gone and I was pretty sure my bedroom was destroyed. When I was sitting in the porch, I overheard the adults' conversation. And remember how I told you guys my parents went all out with decorations? Well, something happened to one of the Christmas lights cables, and it caught on fire and it spread all throughout the house. I was upset, of course, but good thing my dad was up. If not, we probably all would have been burnt in our sleep. Anyways, happy holidays. Story time on how my dad forced me into getting an abortion. And to this day, we still don't speak. So I started dating my boyfriend, Jason, when I was 15. My parents never really minded me having a boyfriend until I got with Jason. He graduated high school, and my dad didn't like the fact that he wasn't planning on going to college. He said that he was wasting his life, but in all honesty, my dad was upset because he was poor, and he felt as though he could never take care of me. There were times when my dad tried to pay him to break up with me, but he'd never take the money. And for me, that was just so embarrassing. Right before my 16th birthday, I found out I got pregnant, and I was kind of happy about it, even though I was still in high school. I've seen plenty of girls making it work. I, of course, told my boyfriend, and we told our family, but my dad wasn't happy about it. About a week later, he told me we were going to the doctor's to go see how far along I was. When I get there, I found out I was in an abortion clinic. If you want to know what happened after that, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of how my dad forced me into getting an abortion. So like I said before, my dad lied to me and told me we were going to the doctor to see how far along I was. And when I get there, turns out he sent me to an abortion clinic. I got upset asking what was he trying to do. He explains to me why I shouldn't have the baby. He tells me if I ever have the child, he would never support me and that he will kick me out of the house. And that sooner or later, me and Jason would break up, which he was sort of right about. I felt like at this moment I had no help, and I told my dad I wanted to call Jason. So he gave me a quarter to make a call on the payphone, and he didn't pick up. My dad explains to me that he's not reliable and that this will be the best decision for the both of us. I thought I didn't have a choice, and he manipulated and gaslighted me into getting it, which I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but I got the abortion, and right after, I felt so numb. I couldn't even face Jason, so my dad lied and told him that I had a miscarriage. It's been years since then, and I still have regrets knowing who my child could have been. Story time on how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. In high school, I was not really popular, but I was talking to this one guy. Let's call him Nick. Nick was also known for cheating, but he told me that they were just all rumors. I also had a best friend, and let's call her Anna. So fast forward, we started dating, and one day I get a text from him saying, "Hey, can you come to my house tomorrow to watch a movie?" So I text him saying, "Of course, meet you at 7. He says, "Okay, see you." The next day, it was 6:30. I started driving to his house for the movie. Well, while I was driving, he probably texted me asking to cancel, but I was driving, so I didn't hear it. So I pull up at his house, and he's in his bedroom. Well, he must have seen me look at him because he looked like he was talking to someone and told them something about hiding. If you want a part 2, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So remember when I told you guys I was on my way to his house? Well, he texted me while I was driving to cancel the movie date, and I didn't know because I was driving. When I get to his house, he's telling someone to hide. I was curious, so I went to his house. By the way, I had a copy of his keys, and I went straight into his bedroom. And I could hear sounds coming from the closet, so I checked it. And it was my best friend, Anna. Story time of how I had an affair with my brother-in-law. By the way, I was 12 and he was 22. This happened a while back. I'm now 16. At the time, I was 12. I barely got on social media. I wasn't really supposed to have it, but I still had an account. So at a family party, I asked my brother-in-law if I could use his phone to go onto my account. He gave me his phone, but when I gave it back, I realized I forgot to log out. And I was, of course, texting other guys. And he obviously saw the conversations and read all of the messages between me and the guys, which I believe made him give hints to me. And he started talking to me, but I didn't really notice at the time. There were times when I did see him and he'd get very touchy. I would tell him to stop, but he told me if I ever told anyone about us, he was going to tell everyone, including my parents, that I was talking to other guys on social media. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I didn't say anything. If you want a part 2, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of how I had an affair with my brother-in-law. By the way, I was 12 and he was 22. So, like I said earlier, he threatened to basically tell everyone that I was talking to other guys on social media if I told anyone about what was going on between us. I was scared because I wasn't allowed to have social media, so I played this game. Until I was 15 and he started inviting me to places alone. So I agreed and he later forced me into doing nasty things. I had no other option because I knew if I spoke up about it, I'd be the one to blame. He started asking for pictures and I'd send them, but then I started to ask for things in return, like ordering things online for me. So it was going on for a while and I would send him pictures in exchange for him to order stuff for me online. Until about a month ago, I was on my sister's iPad and I forgot to log out. And she saw all the messages of him asking for pictures. And thankfully, I said no and kept denying it. Yes, I know I suck at logging off. But to this day, me and my sister barely. A story time about the worst date in my entire life. And ladies, this is why you should really know a guy before meeting up with him. By the way, we're calling him Slim Jim. So I met Slim Jim over Instagram. He was cute and he lived in my area. He did me about a date. So a couple weeks later, we went out to dinner. During our date, he seemed pretty cool, but he kept looking down at his phone. I didn't want to get upset because he wasn't my boyfriend. When we ordered, the guy literally gets $200 worth of food. And me, on the other hand, I got a $20 solid. But all throughout the date, he kept looking around and I was so confused. And he constantly said that he needed to go to the bathroom. He told me that he took medicine that made him go to the bathroom a lot. The last time he went to the bathroom, he was gone for like 30 minutes. And at that point, I was irritated and ready to go until a random girl walks up to me asking if I knew Slim Jim was here. I told her we were on a date and she basically told me that she was his girlfriend and baby mama. If you want to know what happened after that, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of the worst date in my life. And the reason why, ladies, you need to really know a guy before meeting up with him. So, like I said before, he left me at a table for like 30 minutes. And I got upset because I thought he was trying to ditch me to pay the bill. Well, then a couple minutes later, a girl comes up to me asking if I was on a date with Slim Jim. I told her yes, and she basically explained that she was his girlfriend and baby mom. Well, at this point, she was his ex-girlfriend. She starts telling me the craziest things about him, that he robs people and that he will soon be doing time for being a part of a murder investigation and that I should stay away from him because he had HIV and that he gave it to her. I had asked her, how did you find him? And she tells me that he takes all his new girls here. Then she leaves out the restaurant. 5 minutes later, Slim Jim comes back and tells me he thinks he dropped his wallet. In my head, I'm assuming that he's trying to make me pay for the $200 dinner. So I tell him that I have to go to the bathroom. I'm running out of time. This is part 3 of the worst date in my entire life. And the reason why you ladies need to really know a guy before meeting up with him. So his baby mom comes in and tells me the craziest things about him and then dips out. Slim Jim comes back out of the bathroom claiming he lost his wallet. So I had told him that I needed to go to the bathroom. When I get into the bathroom, I'm looking for an escape plan to leave out. When I get out of the bathroom, I walk the opposite way of her table and almost make it out of the restaurant. Next thing you know, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder and I turn around and it's him. I'm literally so confused because he was just sitting down the whole time. He asked me where the hell was I going, and I told him I was looking for the bathroom. He starts to act very weird. He walks me over to the bathroom and literally waits outside of the bathroom door until I get out. And guys, I didn't know what else to do. I needed an escape plan, and I saw a window in the bathroom and literally climbed out of the window to get away from this man. Then 2 weeks later, come to find out, he gets arrested and he's given 23 years in prison. Ladies, this is the reason why you need to watch your surroundings, even in the daylight. So earlier this morning, I had to go to the dentist to get my teeth cleaned. Here's my little baggie. My mom, she couldn't really take me, so I had to take public transportation. And I'm from Philly, so I took SEPTA. So the trolley station was a couple blocks away from my dentist's office. So as I start walking, there's a man behind me yelling and shouting. And he walks around me, and so I'm thinking he's probably talking to somebody else. So he turns around, come towards me, and starts telling me, y'all black, this is weird. So I'm like, obviously this man is crazy, so like, let me continue minding my business. Then he walks up to me again, asking me why am I following him. So I keep walking, ignoring this man. Then he runs behind me and tries to snatch my purse. And literally, it's broad daylight. Alright, I'm running out of time. Y'all let me know if I should make a part 2. This is part 2 on why you ladies need to really watch your surroundings, even in the broad daylight. So, like I said before, I'm on my way to the dentist, and this man is literally shouting at me, and I'm ignoring him. And this man literally runs from behind me and snatches my purse. And guys, my purse is not even snatchable. This is my purse right here. It's like a basketball purse or whatever. And the thing is, my jacket was over my purse. So when he tried to yank my purse, he yanked me and I fell on the ground. And as he was pulling on my purse, he was basically dragging me. But luckily there was like an older man outside, and he took his stick, well his cane, and he started hitting the man with the cane, and he just ran off. See, this is the type of stuff that happened in movies. Like, I would have never thought in a million years that that would ever happen. I really don't feel comfortable walking around here no more. Storytime, how my wig came off in front of my date. The guy I was meeting up with on the date was one of my friend's co-workers. She actually set us up because she thought that he would be my type. Fast forward, we go to Fridays, and we're having a great time. And he seems like a nice, all-around type of guy. Now, that day, my wig was slayed, and I believe the hair was like 30 inches. When the waitress comes over, she gives me and my date our plate of food. Before she leaves, she asks us if there anything else we needed. We said no. Then she put a pen that she had in her hand in her back pocket. And like I said before, my hair was really long. And she ended up sweeping a few of my hairs in her pocket. When the waitress walks away, my wig pops off. And me and my date are in shock. He stares at me for a good 10 seconds, and I tell him I needed to go to the bathroom, and I also got my wig back. But when I come back out to apologize and continue our date, he disappears. Oh yeah, and I also ended up paying for the whole date. This is why you should never eat peanut butter. So my cousin just had her baby girl, and she was just getting around and learning to be a new mommy. But she was really messy when it came to changing diapers. When Father's Day came, she threw the party and invited all the family and their kids. When everyone gets there, everyone is having a good time, and she pulls out bread and starts making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for all the kids. In the middle of her preparing, her daughter starts crying, and it's because she needed her diaper changed. So she went into the bathroom to change her diaper, and after she got done, she handed her to me and starts to wash her hands. Afterwards, she just went right back to making the sandwiches. Once she got done, she handed all the kids a sandwich, and I noticed that she had peanut butter on her arm, and I told her to wash it off. And she was like, no biggie, and licked it off her arm. And she realized really quickly that it wasn't peanut butter. Story time on how I got caught stealing tampons. Yes, I know tampons. Anyways, this was when I was in 6th grade, and at the time, I didn't even start my period. But my best friend Katrina did. She'd get really cute pads and tampons, the one with butterflies and flowers. And I was so jealous because I wanted to keep those cute packets in my purse and take them into the bathroom. So one day after school, I go into a pharmacy and I see the exact same tampons that my friend Katrina had, but they were like $24 and I didn't have that. So I stuffed a box of tampons in my book bag and I tried to walk out. But before I get close to the door, an employee stops me and takes me into a room. And guys, when she found out what I stole, I didn't even get in trouble. She actually bought them for me, and she bought me Tylenol. Story time about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So, when I graduated college, I moved into a new apartment. When I first got there, I was moving my things in, and my neighbor introduced himself and helped me move a couple of things upstairs. After we had got done, he asked for my number, but I told him I wasn't really looking for a relationship. But he said, let's just swap numbers just in case, a fire happens. So I gave him my number, and I really didn't think nothing of it. Maybe a week later, he starts knocking on my door and giving me gifts just about every day, like teddy bears and flowers. Then maybe about 2 weeks later, I told him to stop because I wasn't really interested in him. So the next day, I wake up to make coffee and take out trash. When I pass my living room, the teddy bear gift that my neighbor gave me makes a click noise. When I quickly rip the teddy bear open, it's a camera inside. Like for Part 2 about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So, like I said earlier, the teddy bear gift that my neighbor had gave me makes a clicking noise. When I quickly rip the teddy bear open, it's a camera inside, and I go into a panic mode. Out of nowhere, there's a knock on my door, and it's my neighbor. He says, "Good morning, it's me again. You left your trash too close to the curb, so I moved it for you." I realized that my door was still open, so I try to run over and lock the door, but he just opens it. I yell at him, telling him to get out. He closes the door behind him and says, "That's no way to talk to a neighbor." I start backing up. He looks over and sees that I ripped the teddy bear apart. I didn't know what else to do, so I just ran to my room. And he chases after me and pulls my hair. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So he comes in, I run into my room, and he chases after me. Before I could get up, he pulls onto my hair and starts dragging me towards the kitchen. I saw the coffee that I had made earlier, and I was able to pick it up and throw the hot coffee in his face. He starts screaming loud, and I took that chance to run into my room and lock the door. I immediately start calling the police, and from there, it sounded like he ran out of my apartment. When the cops came, they're doing an investigation, and all the gifts that he gave me all had cameras in them. And when I told them about my neighbor, they did some digging, and come to find out, that man wasn't even my neighbor. He didn't even live at the apartment complex. This is why you should never eat tasty cakes, and why I can't ever look at a coffee cake the same. So a couple years ago, my dad went to my uncle's house to come visit, but he was super hungry. He asked my uncle if he had any snacks. My uncle, of course, said yes. Then my dad went to his kitchen and saw that he had tasty cake coffee cakes. Boy, he was excited because my dad loves sweets. He went to go sit down to watch the game with my uncle, but when he took a bite of the cake, he said it tasted really moist. He ate half of it, then noticed that some of the crumbs on the tasty cake disappeared. When he took a better look at the cake, he realized that the tasty cake crumbs were maggots. This is the reason why girls lie about having a boyfriend when guys try to talk to them. Last week, there was a woman in Harlem, New York, and she was brutally attacked by a man after turning him down. This 31-year-old mother went to go buy a bottle of wine after work. Two men walked in the store, and one of them offered to pay. And she politely declined and said no thank you, and that she could pay for it for herself. When she got ready to walk out, the men basically said that she thinks she's better than them. The men followed her out and threatened that what was she going to do about it. So she tried to ignore them and go about her day. Then they chased her across the street, kicking her, and one of the men tried to bite her eye out, but ended up biting her forehead, leaving a deep wound. She was screaming, and she just wanted to get her daughter. Story time on how I accidentally joined a cult. And the guy who was the head leader, I soon found out that he was a pedophile. At the time, I just graduated high school, and I was not planning on going to college. So all I really did was work. At my job, I met this guy, and we're going to call him Devin. Devin was sweet, but he was so into spirituality and connecting with God. We started talking, then dating, and he asked me if I could come to his church. And when I was younger, I used to go to church, but I stopped going. No real reason why, but I thought it was my calling to reconnect with God again. When we go to his church / AKA the cult, when I first go in, there's like 10 people in the church, and it was run down. It looked like we were in someone's house. When we walked down the aisles, Devin introduced me to their head leader, which they called Father God. He told me that my clothes were too revealing, and he literally slapped my ass and laughed. Like for part 2. This is part 2 of how I accidentally joined a cult, and the guy who was head charge was a pedophile. So like I said earlier, we met his pastor, which they called Father God. The first thing he do is basically say that I look like a slut because of the clothes I was wearing, and slapped my ass. I looked at Devin, the guy that took me to their church, aka the cult. He laughs and tells their Father God that next time he would tell me about their dress code. After that, we go sit down, and I tell him that I was ready to go. He tells me to hold on and just please listen to the service. Anyways, when their Father God starts service, he goes in about women and what they should wear, tell them the only way to be a pure woman is to obey their man, and blah, 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 and dress godly. Just the most insane things ever. And everyone in there were like hypnotized and catching Holy Ghosts, jumping up and down, rolling on floors, passing out, crying. Their Father God calls me up and asks if he could use me as an example. When I stand up, he feels on my breast saying that I'm a temptation for married men. Like for part 3. Story time on how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. Now, this story time is not to encourage others to cheat. I just want to explain how I did it. So, when it came to high school education, I cared less about actually learning the material they taught in school, but more about getting a good grade. So, if you're like me, this video is for you. In school, I created a bunch of friends with all types of people, but not just anyone, but with people that had the same class with me. Even if they weren't in the same class period, if I knew we had the same teacher, guarantee you were on my roster of friends. In the beginning of the year, I started creating an agreement with each friend when it came to things like homework, classwork, projects, and especially tests. Also, I cheated over 95% of my tests and scored high. I really want to get into details, but I'm running out of time. Please come back for a part 2 if you want to know how I did that. This is part 2 of how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. So, like I said earlier, I created agreement with each friend. Now, we never had a discussion over who was doing what work, but I had specific friends for English homework, math tests, etc. I was always involved in group chats for each class, and because I was friends with everyone, I was able to trade what I needed with what they needed. I would trade homework that wasn't even a class I was taking and for test answers. So it was like a win-win, and I always had backups just in case someone didn't have them. But those things mainly came in handy for homework, classwork. Now, when it came to things like tests, like I said earlier, I cheated over 95% of my tests, and I always scored high. Also, by the way, I never studied, and let's get into how I did that. Running out of time, wish TikToks were longer. Come back for part 3. This is part 3 of how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. When it came to things like tests, I cheated over 95% of them and always scored high. Also, by the way, I never studied and I never got caught. I'm going to expose, so hopefully there's no teachers watching this. I had 3 methods of cheating. Number 1 was either one of my friends would take a picture of the test or get the picture of the test from someone else and send it to me, and I'd write codes for what answers were. So like if the answer was apple, I'd write AP for short. So even if I did get caught, the teacher wouldn't even know what the little paper meant. All right, number 2. I also cheated by sneaking a picture of the test myself, then pretending that I needed to go to the bathroom or the nurse because I felt sick, when in reality, I was in a hallway looking up the answers on my phone. My 3rd cheating method was my ultimate way of cheating, just in case the first 2 wouldn't work. I'm running story time about how I snuck out of the house and got caught by my crazy psycho mother. Warning you guys, but here we go. At the time, I was 19 and I just got done with my first year at a university. And while I was at school, I met this cute boy, which we're going to call Kendrick. And that whole year, we were talking. So summertime rolls around, and I go back to live with my parents. And when it came to my parents, they were very strict about me talking to boys, especially my mom. And I know I was 19, but my mom did not allow me to go out if she didn't know where I was at. So this one day, Kendrick is like, oh, we should go out one night. And I went and told my mom that I was going to the mall with my friends. But as the time got later, it was like too late, and my mom started blowing up my phone. And usually when she does that, I'm in big trouble. So I just decided not to pick up because I know I'm going to get in trouble anyway, so I might as well stay out and have fun with whatever time I had. But that was the biggest mistake. Y'all come back for part 2 because it gets bad, really bad. Part 2 of how I got caught sneaking out of the house by my crazy psycho mother. So like I said earlier, I was out and she was blowing my phone up and I was not answering because I knew I was going to get in trouble anyway, so I might as well just have fun. Well, as the night was getting later, I had to go home. And when my boyfriend Kendrick dropped me off, there was a whole bunch of cars outside of my house, and police cars. When I walked into my house, I saw all of my family, uncle, aunts, cousins, police. It was a whole bunch of people in there. I had my uncles and aunt walking up to me asking what happened to me. Said they called the police because they thought I got kidnapped. At one point, I was going to lie and said I got kidnapped because I didn't want to get in trouble. But I just told everybody I was out with a friend. But when my mom saw me, it was over. It was over. I should have just went ahead and buried my grave then and there because I got my ass whooped in front of everybody and the cops.